I want you to think about this statement for just a quick second. This game, Uncharted Drake's Fortune, was Naughty Dog's worst game on PlayStation 3. Now, let that shit sink in for a minute, because if this is the worst Naughty Dog can do, it clearly shows who the top studio is in video game development right now. When your worst game only wins you a few Game of the Year awards, that's a pretty damn good indication which studio is making the best games available. I mean, put it this way. In 2007, Microsoft pretty much shit all over Sony's games. In a similar fashion to me telling the YouTube author to go fuck himself. 360 got BioShock and Mass Effect as exclusives, eventually both ported over to PlayStation 3 as we know, and their flagship game Halo 3. You can also throw Forza 2 into that group of Xbox exclusives as well. What did PlayStation 3 get that year? Lair, Heavenly Sword, Ratchet and Clank, and Uncharted. Yeah, not exactly a fair fucking fight that year. BioShock had one of the most impressive storylines ever created. Mass Effect spanned an entire made-up universe, and Halo 3 was the best-selling game of 2007, even beating out Call of Duty 4, which didn't gain steam until the following year. Meanwhile, Uncharted was pretty much holding up the fort for PlayStation 3. And a little known side note, did you know that Assassin's Creed, Uncharted, and Mass Effect 1 all released within 2 weeks of each other? Can you believe that 3 of the biggest franchises you can find all got started around the same time frame in November of 2007? If you want to throw in a 3-week time span, Call of Duty 4 had already been released, as well as the biggest piece of shit in my collection, Need for Speed Pro Street. But anyway, when these games came out, I needed entertainment for my PlayStation 3. And of that group, I got Need for Speed, Uncharted, and Assassin's Creed. And as I mentioned in the Call of Duty 4 video, I didn't get that game until much later in the year. I first played Need for Speed because it was familiar, and I hated that shit with a passion. Oh my god, was that shit terrible. I put that motherfucker away after maybe a day or two, and then I went over to Assassin's Creed. As I said in that video, the first 2 to 3 hours of that game was damn near amazing. The next 18 hours was pure crap. Then after playing those games, I got into Uncharted, and I will say, at the time the game was released, this was unquestionably the best graphical game of the time on the consoles. All the other games have pretty good graphics, but Uncharted just blew that shit out of the water. The details of the background, the details of the character models, the water, which for some reason was a bitch to make back in the day. I have no clue what it was, but all developers seem to have a challenge when it comes to making water up in this motherfucker. But in any event, there was no graphical equal back in 2007. Not Halo, not Mass Effect, BioShock, Heavenly Sword. The only game that surpassed Uncharted in graphics was Crysis on PC. That's it. And you needed a supercomputer to run that motherfucker back in the day. Now, as for the game itself, it earned the nickname Dude Raider because of the similarities it had with Tomb Raider were undeniable. There's no question, the game is basically inspired by Lara Croft's adventures. It has a sense of adventure mixed in with exotic locations and whatnot, but what made Uncharted stand apart from almost all the other games, what makes Naughty Dog games so amazing, is the ability to make their game feel like a movie. This is what Metal Gear Solid 4 was going for. This is the game that Grand Theft Auto 5 modeled their script writing after. Not only does this game now play like an awesome adventure game, but it feels more like you're playing a movie. This goes past Tomb Raider and into Indiana Jones territory in terms of entertainment, and unquestionably changed how video games needed to write out their campaigns. You know, there's always that game that comes along that shows you how to do things right. Halo was the series that introduced so many features that we have in today's shooter games. Grand Theft Auto showed how vast and varied sandbox games can be and how much content you can offer. BioShock showed that you can create an amazing sense of morality to games in which your choices actually impact the character in the game. With Uncharted, it brought movies to video games better than anyone had ever done before. Just look at all the major productions that occurred after Uncharted to see the production values that went into video games. Not only was voice acting important, but the motion capture of the voice actor became major parts of all games. Not only was script writing important, but now making the game relatable to people was their challenge. Because look at all the heroes we had in games at the time. Master Chief had the personality of a wooden stick. Solid Snake had the personality of a cranky grandpa. Kratos is just an angry motherfucker that needs to lay off the steroids, and Mario is a happy-go-lucky plumber motherfucker stepping on turtles and mushrooms. But here, Drake feels like a guy you could hang out with. I mean, let's be honest for a second. Who seems like someone who's more likely to join your softball team or your flag football team? Commander Shepard is a stiff. Aiden Pierce from Watch Dogs is a boring motherfucker. Lightning needs to get laid once in a while, and maybe only Ezio's the only person that you can really chill with as long as he doesn't stab you in the fucking throat with his knife. So yeah, Nathan Drake is one of the few characters who are actually relatable as a main character. Naughty Dog has even said they wanted Drake to feel like your everyday man, which I'm going to get into in a minute because that's a bunch of bullshit. But basically, he gets into all these crazy adventures out of luck and stupidity. He's supposed to feel like the normal guy in a shitty situation, and the adventure we go on in this game is pretty damn good. It's the ultimate treasure hunt, similar to motherfucking Goonies all those years ago. You find Sir Francis Drake's coffin in the water, only to find out it was a cover-up, and that triggers a story of finding out what happened to Sir Francis Drake over the course of his life. It leads you to the legendary treasure of El Dorado and the conspiracy behind the motherfucker. After a number of twists and turns, with Sully thought being dead, then working for the enemy, to Elena trying to cover the story, Nate taking on an army of pirates, we get one amazing storyline completely influenced by some of the best treasure hunting movies of all time. There's no denying how amazing this game was and how well put together the entire piece was. On top of making just a good game and bringing the movie effects into it, they also introduced the idea that chapters are free-flowing from one to another. There's no, okay, end of one chapter, loading screen, start of a next chapter, similar to what we get in Call of Duty. Basically, the chapters all flow one into another. You finish one chapter and immediately sequences right into the next chapter without any loading screens, without any wait time. It is one complete and coherent story. However, you know there's always a however, right? This game isn't perfect, not by a long shot. As great as this game was, there are some criticisms that it deserves. And in all honesty, all the critique that was leveled towards the game was all but improved in Uncharted 2 and Uncharted 3. Much like Assassin's Creed and Mass Effect, the creators listened to all the criticism and they made the improvements that the game needed in its sequel. However, unlike the other two games, Uncharted didn't need as much improvements as the other games. As I said in prior videos, Mass Effect 2 changed their mechanics and combat top to bottom. Assassin's Creed felt like a completely different game in Part 2, but Uncharted to Uncharted 2 only had to tweak their recipe just a tiny bit because the errors in this game are relatively minor. First problem with the game is the battle arenas. I don't know why games all fall into this trap, and most of the games around the time did the exact same thing, but when you arrive in the location, you can always tell when shit's about to go down. Always, always, always. When you see a large scale, wide open space, there is bound to be a fight. And part of this game is moving from one large scale fight to another large scale fight. The game does a pretty decent job of breaking some of that up with the platforming puzzles straight out of Tomb Raider and shit, or the vehicle sections to add some additional combat action. But the main combat of the game is moving from one large area and having to kill 10 to 15 enemies each time onto another large area to kill another 10 enemies or so. By the end of the game, the shit wears down on you. You know, Uncharted pretty much foreshadows every single section where there will be a fight. As you navigate through the game, you'll come to rooms where they have a stock load of ammo and guns and grenades and all that other shit. So essentially, every big fucking fight is foreshadowed right before you get into the motherfucker. Now, earlier in the video, I said that Naughty Dog did a great job of making Nate relatable. However, this motherfucker is Superman. Oh man, how many gunfights with 20 enemies can you get into and win every single time? How many pirate trucks is he gonna blow up, and how many bad guys is he gonna kill in any given chapter? Shit, even his meleeing abilities knocks the motherfucker out pretty easily. Even when they have a gun in their hand pointing at him, it doesn't make a lick of sense. He can also climb like a motherfucker, man. Between him and the assassins from Assassin's Creed, these guys can monkey their way across any building at any given time. I mean, really, get into a major firefight, melee the shit out of 6 enemies, climb up a castle wall with absolutely no supported gear, and act like nothing happened. Yeah, that shit is not fucking normal, man. You also have the enemy AI, which at times seems smart, but at other times it really doesn't. Granted, these are pirates, and they made them cartoonishly stupid at times, where they just stand out in cover and practically fire their guns like an idiot. And they do move cover to cover. They don't stay in the same spot like, say, a Treyarch game or whatever. But with 20 people, you would think they would surround you a bit more. Nope. They prefer to sit there, wait to get killed, and not use any tactics that are surrounding one guy. Though basically, the only varying tactics they will have will be to use a shotgun guy who advances on you, while a douche from the back of the map throws grenades in your general direction. Probably a Call of Duty player. Now, at the end of the game is where the shit picks up, and that's when you get the most difficult challenge of the game. Each Uncharted game has followed the same exact formula, and I'll get to that in the next two. But you face idiots to start the game, and then at the end, you'll find a smarter group of mercenaries with better guns, weapons, and tactics, and some kind of fictional character or monster. In this game, you're going to go through a Resident Evil moment meant to give you some good scares, and part of the great ending twist of the game involves those monsters. Instead of humans, now you have to fight these monsters, and it's no longer a game mechanic of just hiding in cover anymore. No. The ending becomes some shit-inducing survival moments where you need to run a whole lot more. Running and gunning is mandatory towards the end of the game. No more sitting behind cover and popping a motherfucker's head up as soon as he exposes himself. Now you need to haul ass in order to survive. The twist is something out of left field, but holy shit, does the action increase in doing so. On top of having to face more difficult enemies who have better aim and better weapons, now you have mutated motherfuckers straight out of any zombie game. Personally, I thought it was a great addition, but probably would have been better midway through the game as opposed to just ramping up the difficulty right at the end. Now, one final thing to note about this game, and it's a little bit of nostalgia for me personally. As people might remember, Sony was a little late to the party when it came to gaming social features. Xbox rolled out achievements while Sony had nothing. Sony eventually came up with trophies to counter Microsoft and started rolling out patches to support older games with trophies at some point. When that occurred, one of the few games that I had in my collection in which I could earn a trophy was Uncharted, and my very first PlayStation trophy was a bronze one for collecting the first treasure in this game. Now, I didn't play the full game after I got the trophy support. The only thing I wanted to do was just throw it in the console just to see what a trophy looked like. So basically, I collected my very first trophy, I took out the game, and I never really went back to the motherfucker. But ever since PlayStation 3 got that functionality, my very first trophy came from Uncharted Drake's Fortune. Now, considering what this game needed to be for Sony, considering the mild successes and the outright failures Sony had right before Uncharted, and the huge lineup that Microsoft rolled out in 2007, this was probably Sony's most important game until Metal Gear Solid. Just put it this way, it started what is arguably Sony's most popular and important franchise. Not the best selling, that's still Gran Turismo, but the most popular when it comes to recognizable names. This is a damn good game, only to be improved on in Naughty Dog's next batches of games, which proves that what I said at the start of the video. This is Naughty Dog's worst game on PlayStation 3, because the next videos show exactly how rapidly the studio ascended to the top of the food chain. Just think about all the other games all the other studios in video game making have created over the years that still don't meet the quality that Naughty Dog's first PS3 game actually had. Uncharted Drake's Fortune still blows away a number of games on the console, and this motherfucker is 7 years old now. That says something about the quality of their work, and when I get into the next two videos, you'll see just how damn good this studio is with their development. But for this video, my work is done, and it only leaves 3 videos left in the series, so as always, rate, comment, subscribe, and all that good shit. And tomorrow's video, one of the greatest games ever created for PlayStation 3.